Hey, welcome back. Today, let's talk about synthwave drums.
Part 3.
Hey, we're back. So here we are looking at a totally different approach to the drums. Maybe not totally different. I don't need to talk in extremes here, but it's a different kit from a different contact instrument called Tympo, made by Teletone Audio. And a lot of the other elements are similar. Well, the bass is identical in setup because I had the ARP Odyssey setup from working on Electric Soda, so I added it in here. Just a very basic setup. It is, however, passing through some output portal, which was set up for another instrument. It was set up originally for the piano. So it's kind of adding some layering into the background. So here we have the drums right now. Oops, sorry. So I'm really happy with the way this stuff turned out. Let's turn off the bass. And let's go to the piano bus for a second. So the piano, as I mentioned in the YouTube comment, the description of the video, is actually just from my cell phone. And I've got these loops of the piano where I recorded the cell phone in the middle of the night. And all that extra sound is coming from these output portal tracks. So I'm going to turn this off. And these have a bunch of movement on them. It's being caused by the drums, which is hitting the Vulf compressor, which is the same plugin I was looking at on my other drum track. So let's turn off the piano for now. I'm going to dive in on these drums. So first of all, this drum loop was in 13/4. It has one extra beat at the end. There, right? So 3 bars of 4, 1 beat, and then 3 bars of 4. It just happened to work out this way because the length of the piano sections before the next notes were hit was about that long, and the subdivision of the piano was determined by how I played it. So I was able to come up with a grid and sort of line it up with the movement of my piano notes, and then I ended up with 13 beats. And I like that kind of a challenge. So I wanted the 13 beats to sound really organic. This track here is just all the MIDI for Tympo. So this is the MIDI that's driving Tympo. Let's go back over maybe to here before we have any cymbals on the top. Sorry about that. And again, I have a high shelf that I just basically, instead of using a real plugin for this, I appropriated a high shelf on the Reaper EQ to control the high frequencies of the drums in this case. So in this case, I'm not removing a lot of lows from the drums at any point. They're pretty tight sounding, so they don't have a boomy low end that will stand out a ton when I open up the frequencies like this. So I'm really just leaving the low end intact. So this one's being handled very differently than the other track. So let's turn off the Tympo for a sec. So I started off with this one drum track on Maschine. Again, 13 beats, just like I said. So these subdivisions do line up. But this is just a little bit of a different rhythm, and it's mostly ambient. I think I'm really only keeping the beginnings of a lot of notes and sounds, so No, I have a fair amount of sustain on the kick, for example. But it's not very low-endy. And there is a snare, and there is a second snare that are doing slightly different things. And there is the hi-hat. So like the basic elements of the ending beat are here, but in the end, sometimes I finish the beat on another track entirely, and I really wanted to try out Tympo, and it turned out really, really nice. So let's turn off these extra drums on and off just so you can hear the difference of this extra ambient layer. Naked. Just adds a little bit of an interesting feel. The reason why I had to draw MIDI for Tympo is because it has a beat maker, but it's only in 4/4. So there's a beat maker section here, but I could not use it because I needed to do 13 beats to the bar, or 3 bars of 4 and then 1 bar of 1, and I didn't have a way to do that. Now I've noticed online on forums that they are definitely working on having a version of Tympo that can be in any time signature with the beatmaker, and that's exciting because I would really like to try this out. There's a lot of interesting features in this beatmaker, but this is essentially Tympo, which is a contact instrument, which is meant to mimic a lot of old school dry drums, and this is my first attempt at using it, and it works super well, and I really like the sound. So there's a tiny bit of EQ after it, but if we turn off the drum bus effects, that's essentially the sound that Tympo's giving me. Still going through some of the effects. I'm putting everything a little through these portal effects so that there's a commonality to everything. But I really like what I ended up coming up with, and there's some similarities here. They're just things in different order. So the order of effects that I might use is usually going to relate to what I think the beat needs first, or the element needs first. Like, I will reach for it first. I will try reordering elements if it helps, if it changes the tone in a way that's positive. So we have the Vulf compressor. Again, it's providing a similar role as in the other track I showed. It is sucking up some of the background sounds and creating an interesting little movement. You can see it on the graph there. So it's a little harder to hear when we're not in the lower filtering areas. Definitely some distortion. Definitely it's keeping the leading edge of the punchy part of the sound there, but it's sucking down everything else and then blowing it back up. Compressors can be the most magical things. So now we have Decimort, again doing a lot of heavy lifting, set up very similarly to in the other track where there's a low-pass filter doing a lot of work. Again, the jitter knob's doing quite a bit. Again, I'm on 14-bit. I've got these filters cranked all the way up. I clearly seem to know the setting that I like. And then the preamp gain. So I didn't really show this on the other track, so let's see if I can show it on this one. So let's try turning down the preamp gain. I will try to compensate for the volume loss when I'm editing after the fact. So as we gain more The sound flattens a little bit on the top end. The transients are eaten up somewhat, but it has a very pleasing compression to it. If we go really far, the sound loses a little more definition than I would like. There's always a sweet spot with these kinds of things. Then we have wires. Wires isn't really doing heavy lifting here. It's just adding a little bit of je ne sais quoi. The mix is really low on this, so let's try turning it up so you can hear what it's really doing. And 0. This is where I ended up about 5%. It's interacting with the original sound in a sort of comb filtering kind of way. So it's pretty important to find the right balance because it's going to affect the whole tone of the sound. Now we have this Ready plugin from Kush Audio, which is definitely going to be providing some distortion. It's a tube reamp box. It's basically like a tube distortion with bass control on it. Yeah, definitely a lot cleaner without it. The distortion's just breaking it up just that little bit, and the punch is almost tighter, even though the bass knob's up. It's making just a little less telephonic sounding, like a little less mid-rangey. And then we have this, which is doing the primary filtering. I just decided not to add a filter plugin, so I just, had the high end just roll up and down. But generally this EQ is making it a little less boxy sounding, you can hear. Because without it, the snare and the kick are a little thuddy in sort of a low mid. It's a very small difference, you can see. We're only changing by 1.5 dB here, but that's one of the key features here. Just a little muddy. Just tightens it up. And I will spend quite a lot of time, finding a good center for these EQs. I want to minimize the number of EQ points that I use, and I want them to be as wide as possible. So the widest possible Q in whichever direction that is, that's a higher number in this plugin. You raise it above, from 1.5 to 2.5 in that kind of range to provide a broader EQ, because that will have less of a noticeable equalizy kind of sound, if that makes any sense. If you have a narrow EQ, it will sound very pinched, in that particular place where it is, which I can't make this mic sound bad, but the broader your EQ is, the more gentle and natural the stroke of it is. So let's just put that piano back on. And the piano has a lot of low mids in it, which I did not remove too much of. So the drums is kind of just percolating away on the top. There's actually a lot of body in that piano. But again, just frequency spaces. So right here, the drum still has a really nice punch, but it's filtered more. And I really like hearing that, and I don't want the whole track to sound like that, so I'm sort of sweeping up as we go. Let's put back on the bass. So do I have any final thoughts and conclusions? No, not really on this one. Just wanted to show you a bit more of the internals of certain sounds that I'm using. Let's go to this portal effect. output portal, I really enjoy this, and I have 2 different versions of the effect, which are not really modulating of themselves, but it's basically a glitch effect, a granular synthesizer where it resamples the sounds in a way, and you can try the different presets, and you can also customize it to your heart's content. It's really detailed what you can do with it. So if I knew how everything worked, like these modulations are crazy and you can humanize them more. So if you humanize this modulation more, you can see the range of variation it can provide on each pass. And there's so many things you can automate in here. But really, a lot of times I just find a preset that I tweak and ultimately don't learn absolutely everything about how this plugin works. There's also delay and reverb built in that can play off the end of the granular effect. So that's a real aside, because that has nothing to do with synthwave drums. But I hope some of what I've been sharing through this little series is helpful or informative in some way. Thanks so much for watching, as always, and I'll talk to you again soon. I hope there were some sweet and useful nuggets in there for you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell on the channel so you can see more videos like this. This is part of a longer series, so I'm sure there's more that I have to share that you might find really useful. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you again soon.